Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. Nipissing Township Council, Tuesday, February 8th. I thank you for your patience. Our Committee of Adjustment ran a little over, so we'll commence the meeting at 6:57 p.m. instead of 6:30. I'll start with, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest?
No.
Thank you. Seeing none, because we have a presentation tonight, we're going to adjust our agenda and we're going to do number 4 with our audited financial statements by KPMG. We're going to start with that tonight, and then we'll come back to staff reports and committee reports later. So, Oscar, are you there?
I am, Your Worship.
Well, welcome, and thank you for your patience.
Not a problem. Not a big deal, to be honest with you. So no thanks are necessary. So
Going to start. I will open the floor to you for your presentation, and we will follow along with bated breath.
well, thank you. Thank you very much, Your Worship and members of council. It's always a pleasure to be here, unfortunately virtually, but maybe next year. Purpose of our presentation today is to provide council with an overview of the financial statements and the year-end audit. And so you do have the financial statements in your package. I'm assuming you can see the screen that I'm on with the presentation just to assist with some of the discussion. So in terms of our financial statement audit, it is complete. We are prepared to issue what's known as an unqualified audit opinion. This is what people in our profession call a clean audit opinion, and it's the highest level of assurance that you can receive under Canadian auditing standards. What you will find from the auditor's report is it doesn't say that your financial statements are 100% accurate, because we would be required to test every transaction. Rather, what it says is that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. And materiality is the level of errors that we are able to absorb before we either change our opinion or require your staff to adjust the financial statements to correct them. It's typically based as a percentage of the prior year's revenue. So for the purposes of the 2021 audit, it's $110,000. Now, materiality drives a number of different parts of our audit. It determines sample sizes, for example. What it also determines is what we call our posting threshold. And the posting threshold is the level above which, if we have an error that hasn't been corrected, we have to report to council. And that posting threshold is about $5,500. So that's the level of precision, if you will, from an audit perspective. The audit for this year has gone well. It typically always does. I will say, council, that you are the first municipality that I have that reports this early. So from a timing perspective, you're significantly ahead of the curve in comparison to some of your peers. No real issues that we identified during the course of our audit that we wish to bring to council's attention. There were no uncorrected audit differences above our posting threshold. We didn't identify any significant weaknesses from an internal control perspective for those controls that we did test. There were no difficulties with management. There were no limitations on what we could see. So we didn't have anything that we call a scope limitation, where we asked for information and it wasn't provided. And there were no changes to our planned audit approach. We were basically able to execute as we had planned. So with respect to the financial statements, the first statement is your statement of financial position. And this is a snapshot of the assets and liabilities of the municipality at December 31st, 2021. You take assets minus liabilities, you get your surplus. What you can see is that at year end, the municipality had roughly $3.6 million of cash on hand, which is generally up compared to the prior year. What you will notice is there was a swing between investments and cash. Last year, there was a $2 million GIC that was cashed in during the year. So that's now sitting in your bank balance as opposed to short-term investments. The balance is up about $600,000, and that's because of what we call a cash adjusted surplus. This is where, when you look at the nature of changes in your financial statements, you would have actually had positive results. You can see that you do have taxes receivable on the books of about $127,000. That's down from the prior year at $153,000. And we'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. But with respect to accounts receivable, these are funds that are owed to you at year end and paid after year end. They've gone down by about $62,000. Part of that is the amount of HST that was owed to you at year end has come down. So as council's aware, you do get a rebate of your HST back. Last year, there was $145,000 owing to you for HST refunds. This year, it's $110,000, and that oftentimes is determined by capital. If you have big capital expenditures at the end of the year, what you'll find is your HST is generally higher because it takes time to get the HST back. Last year, there was about $11,000 of interest on that GIC that was accrued, but not yet paid. Because the GIC isn't there, the accounts receivable for the interest is obviously not there. And then last year in 2020, there was about $11,000 of engineering fees that you were recovering with respect to your roads department that wasn't present in the current year. And these are sort of the major changes. If you look at your accounts receivable from another perspective, what we've done on this slide is we've shown the current portion of your taxes receivable, which are about $80,000. With an additional $50,000 in arrears. So these are taxes that are owing to you for taxation years prior to 2021. Technically, taxes can be outstanding for 3 years before the municipality is able to take action against the taxpayer, basically by registering the property for sale, selling it, and taking from the proceeds your tax portion. What you'll notice, probably more significant, is your taxes receivable as a percentage of the municipal levy. So 6 years ago, for every dollar that you tried to collect in taxes, 9.5 cents was outstanding at year end. That number has now gone down to 4.5 cents. So what you'll find is that your taxes receivable, despite the fact that your levy may actually be increasing, your taxes receivable are coming down. And what that means, quite frankly, is you're doing a good job from a collection perspective. And you've seen that improvement over the last 6 years. You can see that HST really represents the single largest component of your receivable balances. And then there's a variety of other amounts that are outstanding. These are generally user fees that are paid to you and other amounts. So from a liabilities perspective, accounts payable and accrued liabilities, this represents balances that are owed to you, that are owed by you at year end, where you incur the expense, but you pay it after year end. These have gone up by about $31,000. And there's a number of things that go into this. Part of this is that the amount that you owe staff for unused vacation, so vacation entitlement earned but not taken, has gone up. People will prepay property taxes in the municipality. So not only are you finding that the amount of taxes outstanding are coming down over time, but you've actually got people that are prepaying their taxes for future years. And also your development related deposits are up. So if we go to the next slide, this is basically a breakdown of your accounts payable by component. And so what you can see is that a big chunk of this is actually your advanced property tax payments. These are funds that technically, if people wanted their money back, you would be obligated to provide because the taxes aren't payable yet. You can see that deposits with respect to development have gone up. The largest single accounts payable that you'll see is with respect to the OPP. So there's an invoice for their December policing costs, which are paid in January, and then a range of staffing related costs. So with respect to vacation, accrued wages, and accrued overtime. And these are balances that are there, generally speaking, on an annual basis. Your deferred revenue represents funding that has been received, but not yet earned. So, and the big component of this was with respect to gas tax. You'll notice that the balance has come up by $116,000. So during the year, the municipality received a total of $212,000 for federal gas tax. You've only spent $96,000 of that. So under the gas tax arrangements, you're actually allowed to bank your gas tax. You can accumulate it over time to spend on projects. Until such time as you spend it, though, it's not revenue, so we're required to defer that. The $212,000 is a fairly large number in comparison to prior years. There were actually two components of gas tax paid. There was your regular allocation, and then there was what was known as a top-up. So what you'll find is if you're doing a comparative analysis, the gas tax this year, the total payments that you had was roughly about $100,000 higher than what you would have seen in the past. Municipal debt represents debentures that have been issued by the municipality for the purchase of capital. Municipalities aren't allowed under the Municipal Act to borrow for operating purposes, only for capital, and that's what all your debt relates to. Last year it was $409,000. This year it just creeped over $460,000. So that's a net increase of about $54,000. There was $140,000 of new debt that was taken out this year for an excavator. So that brings this number up. And then what you'll find is that you also made $86,000 in principal repayments during the year, which brings this number down. So a bit of a net change from a net debt perspective. From a liability perspective, your largest liability relates to the landfill closure. And this is an estimate that municipalities are required to put on the books relating to the cost of your closure and post-closure costs. And it's a bit of a weird calculation, if I may. So I'm going to try to explain it. So from a landfill perspective, you have your general operating period. And when you look to the notes to the financial statements, we've disclosed the estimated useful life of both landfills that the municipality entails. When they get fill, technically you're required to close them. So you cap them, you close them, and then for a period thereafter, 25 years for both landfills, you have to do monitoring. And so what the accounting rules require municipalities to do is every time you put garbage in the landfill, you have to reflect a portion of that liability for the closure and the post-closure costs. So the way that you do it is you calculate those costs in today's dollars. So you figure out for a landfill of this size with this much waste, this is how much it's going to cost us to close it. This is how much we're going to have to spend on closure activities. And then what you do is recognizing you're not going to spend those monies into the future until you get into the future. You actually have to inflation adjust them forward. So you adjust for the fact that there's inflation and escalation in the pricing to get the total cost in the dollars in the years that they're going to be spent. And the rate of inflation that the municipality uses is published by Statistics Canada. It's the non-residential construction index inflation. So when you hear people talk about consumer price index, that's an inflation measure for personal purchases and a personal basket of goods. The non-consumer price, non-residential construction index is actually more akin to the type of operations that you're talking about here, because these are contractors. What you will find, council, is at the date of measurement, in 2021, it was 10%. So everybody talks about 5% for general inflation. For the non-residential construction industry, it's 10%. So what that does is we use a 10-year average to determine that. It drives this inflation adjustment up considerably because the average rate of inflation went from 2% to 3%. Because of the inflationary periods that you're seeing here. So what you now have at this point is you've got your future costs and future dollars. What you have to do is you have to bring them back to today's dollars to get them on the financial statements. So you inflation adjust them out to figure out when you're going to spend them. And then you have to net present value them back. And what you'll notice, council, and it's a bit of a technical discussion, there are two different rates. So to project future costs, you use inflation. To bring it back to today's dollars, you use your borrowing rate. And what you will find is that inflation has gone up, borrowing rates have basically stayed the same. And what this does is this drives the cost up. And so this increase that you're seeing in the financial statements, the biggest chunk of it, council, is inflation. Now, the reality is you will not be required to pay $1.3 million today for this. These are costs that are significantly out in the future, in some cases beyond my lifespan. So this, council, I just want to stress, this is an accounting exercise. It's not an actual bill that somebody has given you that you have to pay in the next 2 years, if you will. So with respect to other assets, down below, we talk about your tangible capital assets. And this is the investment that the municipality makes in your roads, in your buildings, in your fleet. So when you buy an asset, the number goes up because you put it on the books. And what you do is you amortize it over time, basically depreciating it over the useful life. So your tangible capital assets have gone down by about $153,000. So during the year, the municipality spent $646,000 for assets. And when you look at the next slide, what you can see are the major changes. So what we've done for council is we've just summarized the capital additions more than 15,000. So the excavator that we talked about that had the debt of 140,000, you spent 270,000 for that excavator. There was about 265,000 for road improvements. There were $47,000 of HVAC upgrades to the municipality's buildings, which were actually funded by the government as part of COVID. And then $40,000 for fire department equipment. So 646,000 in total. What you'll find is that you actually sold 2 excavators in order to have a down payment, if you will, or a trade-in with respect to the new excavator. So you got $40,000 for a 312 excavator and $90,000 of trade-in value for a rubber tire excavator. And then there was 672,000 of depreciation expense. So some things pull these numbers up, some pull them down. Prepaid expenses represent the portion of things that you've paid for that you haven't actually used yet. And the biggest change here, excuse me, is with respect to your insurance. So the biggest chunk of your prepaid expenses is your insurance doesn't run the same as the calendar year. So the portion that you haven't used yet, you actually set up on the books as a prepaid and you'll expense in 2022. The number has gone up by about $10,000. And the reason for that, council, is because the cost of your insurance premiums have gone from $73,000 last year to $93,000 this year. So there was a $20,000 jump in your insurance premiums. Because your insurance is basically 6 months prepaid, half of that accounts for the increase here. And I mentioned inflation. This is an example of the inflationary pressures that you're coping with. Last item is with respect to the inventories. Your inventories are down because of gravel stockpiles on hand. You use gravels for road repairs, road maintenance. There's a count that's performed by your staff. There's pricing that's undertaken, and this is a movement in the inventory balance. What you'll see, council, is at the end of the day, you've got roughly $19.8 million of reported surplus, 18 million of which is your investment in your infrastructure. The rest is basically reserves and reserve funds that you have available for capital and operating purposes. The next statement is your statement of operations, and this is a summary of your revenues and your expenses for the year. What you can see is that your total revenues have gone down somewhat. They were $4 million last year, $3.9 million this year. Your largest source of funding is taxes, roughly $2.8 million. You can see that government transfers and grants have actually gone down. So last year, the municipality received 905,000 in grants. This year it was 767,000. That's a decrease of about 138,000. The biggest chunk of this was the province's Safe Restart program. So what we've done for the information of council is we've given you a 3-year trend of your grants by source. So the yellow bar is 2019, the light blue bar is 2020, excuse me, the darker blue bar is 2021. What you'll see is that certain grants, like your OMPF, the OCF, which is a capital grant, have basically stayed the same. What you can see is that in 2019, the province gave you a big chunk of money for modernization funding, which didn't materialize in 20, and there was actually a bit of a recovery in 21 because you hadn't spent it all. But the biggest change on a year-over-year basis is the Safe Restart. This is funding that the province has provided to municipalities in order to offset COVID costs. There was round 1 for 2020, round 2 for 2021. And what you can see is that the value that you received has gone down significantly. That's basically what's dragging your grants down. Other revenues have gone from about $97,000 to $135,000. That's an increase of about $38,000. This year, you had higher building permit revenues. The building permits went up by about $48,000. And what this reflects, council, very much is last year was depressed by the pandemic. This year, you're starting to get back to it. Your user fees have gone from about 136,000 to 152,000. That's an increase of $16,000. And there's a lot, council, that's in here. Your landfill fees have gone up by about $13,000. You'll see that your planning fees have gone up by about $11,000. And your museum operations, once again, impacted by the pandemic in 2020, those revenues have gone up by about $7,000. What you'll find is you had these increases, your road revenues are down by about $21,000. And I mentioned when we talked about accounts receivable, you had engineering fees last year that people owed you, not this year. That's part of what's tied to this revenue decrease. From an expenditures perspective, your expenses are up by roughly $210,000. Some departments fairly consistent on a year-over-year basis. You can see transportation costs are up. Part of that is because you've had more hot mix patching during the year. And also we can see the price of sand and salt starting to increase because of inflationary pressures. You can see that your recreation and cultural services have gone up by about $24,000. A lot of this is the restart of the museum operations. So from an overall perspective, before we make adjustments, you had a surplus of about $77,000. As I mentioned, that landfill liability has gone up significantly because of inflation. We present that separately because in the discussions that we've had with staff, it's not really a cash item. It's more of an accounting adjustment than an actual liability. So you've got a reported surplus for financial statement purposes of $485,000. Now, I'm going to caution council, that is an accounting loss. It's not an actual cash loss. And so in order to provide some insight, what we've done is we've actually reconciled to how the municipality does your budget. And so if you think about your budget, transfers from reserves show as a revenue item. They don't show as a revenue in your financial statements. Payments on long-term debt, the interest component is expensed for your financial statements. The principal component reduces the amount on your balance sheet. That actually shows as an expense in your budget. And probably more importantly, you don't budget for depreciation expense or amortization expense. You actually budget for the amount that you're going to spend. And so there's a number of adjustments that you need to make in order to be able to reconcile this to your budget. And we've gone through it in detail. You can also see that landfill closure expense we've added back because that's not actually cash. You don't budget for that. And what you end up having, council, is at the end of the day is the municipality ran a surplus adjusted to meet your budget of about $148,000. Now, council, what you can do is you can do one of two things or a combination of. You can take this $148,000 and you can transfer it into reserves, or you can take this $148,000 and you can move it into your 2022 budget to reduce the impact of the levy. And that, council, is a decision that you have to make because that's a decision of council. So we just provide this to you for information. Really, that's the number that I would suggest is probably the biggest piece of information you're looking for. What I would suggest is it's good because it's not negative. It's also not very high in comparison to your total budget, which doesn't mean that you're running these massive surpluses. So your worship, members of council, that concludes our presentation of your financial statements and the audit. I'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today to present them. If there are any questions, more than happy to answer them at this time.
Turn that over to council. It
was great, Oscar. It's always nice listening to you. You do a good job. Last year, you gave us a financial benchmarking report. Do you do that every year, or I don't see one this year? And I really enjoyed it.
Through
other municipalities.
Through you, your worship, we haven't, but we can. So what we will do is we will provide the financial benchmarking through Chris, and she can bring it forward to council at your convenience. Happy to make the presentation, happy to provide it to council for information. It's just with the timing, we wanted to make sure we got the financial statements out and the presentation out.
Wonderful. Thank you, Oscar.
Right. We can wait for the benchmarks, no doubt.
I made a note.
Pardon?
Good.
Perfect. There's never any movement of this reserves until we see what the 2022 budget is, correct?
That's correct, your worship. It's currently sitting in your surplus for financial reporting purposes. And then once you decide what to do with it, it gets adjusted in 2022.
Good.
I have a question, your worship.
Yes, Councillor Marchant?
Yeah, on the statement of operations, under planning and development. My page 12, I'm not sure what slide number. But it had 25,944 for actual planning and development in 2020. And 2021, it dropped to 7,000. And the expenses, I was just curious, was because we were submitting to the planning board?
Yes.
Councillor Marchant, those planning fees that we paid out were for, we finished up the update to the zoning bylaw. That's what those expenses changed from. We had finished up the zoning bylaw update in 2020, and we didn't have those costs in 2021.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Great question. Any other questions? Okay. Oscar, as always, I'd like to thank you. And if at your convenience, you can do the benchmarks, we'd appreciate it. It's always good to see how we stand in the other municipal community. And I thank you ever so much.
You are most welcome, your worship, and members of council. We'll get that off to you. So thank you very much for having us here today.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Night, Austin.
Okay. We'll go to staff reports. And I have two on my desk. And Gravity has John Paul Negrinati on the top. So if you didn't have a chance before, just look over it if you don't mind. And if you have any questions for John Paul, he's right there. And
No questions, your worship. Just thank you, John Paul, for looking into the soil thing.
You're welcome.
okay, anybody have any questions for John Paul?
No.
Okay, and we'll go to Dan McGinnis.
So all the trucks are back up and running?
Yep, they're all running.
They're all in good shape in another 10 years?
Yeah, we got another 10 years left in them.
That's total.
Yeah. Including the brand new one.
Great, okay.
Yeah, I saw that in the accounts payable. Did you have trouble with two, what do you call it, muffler systems or
Yeah,
on
well,
both trucks?
they both had issues.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I saw that.
Not necessarily mufflers, but
Well, whatever you call that.
Yeah, one
There
was,
were lots of
one was the exhaust on
Yes.
one truck and the other truck was a lot more than an exhaust.
One of the things you probably don't know, it took a heck of a lot to find the parts.
Oh,
So some of the stuff, I believe, came from Memphis.
Yeah,
Probably the last place in North America to have them.
I
yeah.
can
So-
only imagine you can't even get a car parked.
Well, and they're older, right? So it's getting harder and
It's
harder.
harder. And these people that make these engines,
They're not even in.
they're
don't
not
make
here
them
anymore.
Wow.
They're gone. So what you're stuck with is what you're stuck with. So it's only gonna get worse. It's not gonna get better.
like old age.
Come on,
Okay.
you're in your golden years.
Yeah. Golden, all right. Any other questions for Dan? In which case, I'll turn it over to Will.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chief.
So if For the ones that remember about the mandatory certification a couple of years ago, that all firefighters have to be mandatory certified, it is coming back. One way or another. We won't know all the details probably for a few more weeks, months, but it is coming back. So we'll keep you posted on that. That's gonna be quite interesting.
That's on all the components of their,
Firefighter 1, 2, Auto X, they'll have to be certified.
When was the last time they were certified?
We're just trained to go, we've been training to the level. We have probably 5 or 6 that are certified.
Right, okay. Now they want them all certified.
The province wants everybody in the whole fire industry to be certified.
Wow, it's a
They-
huge expense, everything.
After they close the fire college and
Wow.
Yeah.
Time commitment too. You're asking
Yes.
volunteers
A volunteer fire department.
to give a
So,
lot of.
what they had done is, I'm gonna say about 17, 18 years ago was when the certifications first came out, where you had to be certified to do everything. But all the college in Gravenhurst was still open. And Azilda was just coming online at that point. And then they got away from it again. And then they brought it back in again. And then they got away from it.
it came back, proposed coming back, and I believe it was 18. And now it's coming back and it's not going anywhere.
What
They're
about,
saying
what about the people that have been on there for a long period of time? They got a grandfather?
some are gonna be grandfathered, some will be legend in. Some will have to do it right, but we do have some time. They're gonna give us until 2026. But
But
Do
they
we have
can open
anybody
it. Sorry.
internally in the fire department that can do that? No, okay, I wasn't sure if they're already certified. I
No.
thought maybe they could.
no, because it has to be through AS&E or the Pro Board certification. And one of the conference calls today, one of the chiefs asked, and they won't allow chiefs or anybody to sign off. So
I think
time will tell, but
province gonna have a hard time.
it's a lot of fire departments are concerned about losing members, especially ones that just help out with medical or just driving stuff. Because in order to do a pump ops course, you have to have firefighter 1 and 2.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of questions about all that. So hopefully they'll work out.
Because what's gonna happen is you're gonna have a piecemeal bunch of people who have certification on this, certification on this, certification on this, but you can't mix and match. So you get to a call and you go, "Oh, sorry, you can't operate that because you're not certified." And with a volunteer fire department, you don't know who's coming.
And a lot of people are concerned because they have to be certified for their full-time jobs. All the training and stuff, they have to keep up on that. Now they have to come here and keep up on it as well.
Mm.
Instead of just training to the level, they have to write exams, do skills in front of other people and so we'll see what happens with that. We'll keep you posted. Routine maintenance on equipment and vehicles. And we're prepping for the zoning bylaw next week, starting at 4 p.m. It's going to be a hybrid between Zoom, in person, and anybody that writes in. I would like to see that we put 4 o'clock as a start time. I don't know what everybody feels about a 6 o'clock end time. Give it 2 hours, or is that too short, too long?
I think that's fair, don't you?
I would-
We were 2 hours last time.
I believe it was 2
Yeah.
hours.
And, I mean, we were all ready to go. There was nobody there for 20 minutes at 5:30, and then 2 people came in right at the end. So giving them till 6 is fair.
So what we'll do is we'll put out another information package, hopefully tomorrow or Thursday. We'll be in person, so there'll be 8 of us, council and staff, where I'll be allowed 1 or 2 people to come in at a time, speak, and then we'll have an exit out the back and we can invite the next group. Anybody that wants to zoom in, they'll have to register and we'll give them a Zoom in link. And then anybody that writes in or emails in, we can acknowledge that as well. It will be streamed on YouTube as well. So I believe we have covering all our bases. So we'll put an information package out on Facebook and the website no later than Thursday afternoon.
We're hoping for tomorrow. 'Cause we
We're
just
hoping
get it
tomorrow.
Scheduled so that there's a flow to it other than us just sitting for
Do
2
we have any
hours on
questions
YouTube.
or concerns? Send in
We
yet?
haven't heard anything yet.
All right.
So we're hoping tomorrow, just if Chris and I can take 5 minutes and juggle our schedules together, sit down.
If we can be in the same room, we'll get that done.
So that's next.
Next Thursday, the 17th.
Yeah.
From 4 PM till 6 PM.
And I did supply members of council in their package the wording for the
Yes.
proposed bylaw. This is also posted on our website for the public to see.
Right,
This is the change we're talking about.
from did you have, are we posting, and what are we posting right now, what we have already?
That's
About that?
already on
Okay,
in our
This is-
original document. This is just the change that we want to make.
okay.
And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor and council.
Thank you ever so much. Any questions? Okay. Chris Crosby,
I would like to schedule a budget meeting. If we could.
poke myself in the eye.
Are we talking separate from a council? Or a council meeting?
A council meeting budget to go over. I don't have all the levies, but I would like to go over the capital forecasts.
Okay.
And for the figures that we have,
Okay.
that's why we're releasing the RFP hopefully early. We need those figures for our capital.
Okay.
But I'd like to start if we could. So we should have everything in place by March 15th. We should have all of the RFP numbers in. So March 15th, I would like to propose as our first budget meeting. I'm hoping to have a levy amount. So I'd like to advertise that. All I have to write down, everything else for me is within the package.
That's a normal council meeting or is that? a
Yes.
council
Yep.
meeting?
It's a normal
Normal.
council meeting and we'll just go through the budget line by line and the capital forecast.
Is that good with everyone? Counselor Marchant, you good for March 15th? For a budget meeting?
You're on mute.
Think you're muted.
Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button. Yes, I'd be available.
Okay, thank you. Good. I think everybody's going to be available, so again, I mean, what can I say? How much fun can you have in one night? Okay, so if there are no more staff reports, we'll go to committee reports and we'll start with Councillor Moore.
We had a recreation committee meeting last night, but I think James will get me in on that. I've got notes, do you want me to, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
you're Good to go, yeah.
Okay. Well, we discussed our family fundscape, which is going to be February 9th. I think we've got that all straightened out. It will run from 6 to 9,
What's the date?
February 19th.
Okay.
And, yeah, and we will have the fireworks, I believe we discussed at 8:30, right, 12? Yeah. And we're going to have recreation committee is going to have a paint night on March the 19th. That's where you pay a fee, you see what you're painting, and whoever's putting it on will kind of walk you through it. Everybody comes out with painting. That's going to be $45. All the supplies are included in that fee.
That's out of painting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we talked about that. I mean, you could bring.
I mean, I'm talking finger painting, you know? That's my skill level, but that's good. Good, good idea.
We talked about different things for the budget of this year. And we'll discuss that when we budget with the rec committee. We're gonna look at the dishwasher in here. If we can repair it or if we have to replace it, what the difference is in price. Chief Bateman has had some interest in different gym equipment downstairs, so we will look at that. And we know we're looking at the RFP for the playground equipment later on tonight. There was a bottle drive, and I believe the number that they picked up last time was 442.35. So that's doing quite well, and we can decide what we want to use that for. We have a very avid new member, Steph is her name, And she would like to start soccer teams. And she wants to grab the reins and do that, so let's see how she goes. And we'll try it this year and then eventually look for sponsors if we can get enough interested community
Where would you play at Heritage Park?
at Heritage Park. Yeah.
You're gonna have to buy nets,
Yeah, we would have to budget for nets and balls.
and that would depend on how many players, right?
That's right.
Whether it's
Yeah.
2 nets or 4, or,
I think we talked about two, a set for the younger group and a set for the older group.
okay?
So,
I'm not sure if it'd be all in one night or it'd be
yeah,
a couple nights, different age group.
They're not real expensive.
no, I don't think they are. And we might even be able to fit it into that grant money somehow. I'm not sure.
We can probably use the bottle drive money.
Yeah, okay. Well, right, right, great. And I think I covered everything, and the next meeting will be March the 7th.
And I think one of the only things we were talking about was the sending out a questionnaire, if it was possible, to our gym members, for them to give us a response on what we have and what we would like to see, and what's being used and what's not being used. So it'll give us a forecast.
The survey downstairs,
I
that would
think
be
that
far
would
better.
be the best
Yes.
way, because we only have mailing addresses
That's
for those that
Yeah.
have.
That's worked in the past for us. I believe, survey downstairs.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Counselor Marchant?
Yes, we actually finally had a source water protection meeting. Source Protection Authority Annual General Meeting. Dave Britton was elected chair. And we had a report from the supervisor, Dave Ellingwood. One interesting thing is that the drinking water source protection funding request is going to be now for 2 years to, I guess, to help part of the red tape. So they have to submit a request for money for 2 years, not just one. So it's something that was interesting. And they're going to be doing an update to the source protection plan. They're working on it. With the source water, there is the board of directors, which I'm on, and then there is a committee of local people that actually do the committee work and the planning. And so they're the ones that will be actually doing the plan. So it was a short meeting, but we had one and they booked 3 more this year, but we'll see, because this is the first one we've had for a year. The BET committee, the annual meeting is next week. And I don't know, I guess you may have got the bill already, Chris, but will be coming out again.
Yeah,
And yeah, and I just wonder if there's any correspondence about the BET committee from Bondsfield.
No, we have not received any.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, that's all I have, your worship.
Thank you. Any questions for Counselor Marchant? Okay, we'll go on to Counselor Kirky.
Okay, something I didn't mention at the last meeting, we haven't had a library meeting yet. We will on the 28th. But the financial committee, we discussed potential budget, and we're aiming for a 0% increase. The 3 councillors on the board suggested strongly that we go for a 0 increase in the budget. There is a little bit in reserve that we could use for wage increases for the library staff. But at the end of the day, we're trying to vote to a 0 increase in the library budget. So because of what's currently going on in the library, that's off and on all year, so their expenses are way down. But there is no reserve. So we'll be meeting again on the 28th.
If I can offer my 2 cents, I would build up that reserve rather than use it.
Yeah.
We finally got a reserve started there. They've never had one. And,
Well, Yeah, no, I get that. But they're just discussing wage increases and not, and it won't be large wage increases.
I'd rather see a slight increase and leave the reserves alone, but that's just nothing.
I think, and I agree with you, I would support you if you went in and said, I believe that, you know, a small increase, you know, 2%, because again, we found in the past, when there's no increase, it comes back in a year that, or 2 years where it's, now we need 8%.
Oh,
People
yeah.
are going 8%, my God.
Yeah.
Where if we had gone 2, it would have gone better. So that would be my recommendation. James?
I'm for reserves because the crystal ball's not there and we can't see the future.
You know, when you have a
Better have
bad
some.
day, like the tree falls through the roof,
Mhm. Yeah.
you know,
that's
you
a prime
didn't plan
example.
on that.
No.
So,
But
that-
what-
I
yeah.
think that would be the advice from our council. Councillor Marchand,
Yes,
how do you feel about that, a 0% for the library, or we were suggesting perhaps a minimal increase, you know, percentage wise?
I think, you know, the inflation's going up, so should be a bit of a minimal increase, but not a lot.
Right, I agree. None of us want a lot, but you're right. Everything's gonna go up in price. I think they need to go up to support that.
So just to avoid touching the reserve. Okay.
Yes,
Therefore,
Yeah,
No, well, I realize that, but, you know, when Marie presented us with the current cost of living and what the Sioux Lookout Library staff is getting paid because they're similar size to us, and that's not acceptable. You know, the rest of the world is taking 1.5 to 1.8% wage increase. Yeah, they might be giving the 4.8 up there, towing the line with COLA, but
Right.
we're not.
no,
We can't afford it, and if we chase COLA, we'd be chasing it, you know,
right,
like the late 60s all over again.
no, that's reasonable. But again,
Yeah.
I think we would support that.
I would. Sorry, your worship, I would think that the amount shouldn't be any more than what our taxation increase is. You know, along the lower lines at 2 point something or other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Agreed.
agreed. Thank you. So
Yeah.
that would be our
Thanks, Tom.
guidance, if we can, to support you, you
Yeah.
know. But I did read the minutes and I did see that, you know, councilors Kerr and Prakarsky were supporting 0, but, you know, we've been that route, you know, and I don't think it works.
Well, keep in mind, this is my first ticket.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So that's why we're here to support you.
That's right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you, and I appreciate that.
Was there anything else, Steve?
Nothing really at this point. The reopening, I guess they're gonna phase it according to what the province wants or what the town
Hey, tell us.
does. So I'll have more on the 28th, or after the 28th. We'll see what happens there.
Okay, good. And was there anything you wanted to add, Counselor Scott?
no, we're all covered up.
Okay, well, I've just got 2 things. East Home was on the 19th, and I love the temporary wage enhancement has been again extended now to March 31st. They're lobbying for more containment money because testing, they have to do more testing again, and containment money was really reduced. And also the government has mandated more hours of care per resident, which is excellent. It's just so difficult because an administrator doesn't count because they don't have direct care. But still, they're the ones that are doing, scheduling or whatever for everyone else. So it's really quite an interesting undertaking, and it's all under the new Long-Term Care Act that recently came out. But anyway, system and program changes, the general ledger and the payroll subledger is progressing. So I was there 50 years ago and it's changing now. So they're really moving along, and the network project can't start till February 14th because they had to wait till signage is up, but the signage is up now. And the problem they had with the sign originally was they didn't have the full, they had federal government gave this much, provincial government gave this much. They can't do that. They have to put the total on the signs. Okay, so it had to go back and be redone because of that, but it only took 2 more weeks. We have a new mandated infection prevention and control person that just started because the government has mandated that since COVID came in. So we're ready. They're advertising for an assistant director of care, and the collective agreement was signed. The last one over 4 years was never signed. So that meant any time it could come into debate. So this one has been signed. Operationally, you and I have all been to the grocery store lately. Supply chain issues. And at East Home with 128 residents, at the last month, they found out that dairy would be incredibly hard to procure. Chicken would be difficult. And so we're looking at huge one-time allotments and putting them in possibly reefer trucks and running them outside because they think that we could have a food shortage, and you cannot have that. And for other people, they suggested you can get your protein from different sources, but people in long-term care homes don't like different sources. They've had meat and potatoes and things like that, and they don't want it from, other whatever. So that's how we're going to try to go and get around it. So huge orders, which should last 2 months. So it's difficult, and they're doing the same thing as we are. We're waiting, Nipissing Township is waiting for their budget, and they're reviewing operational and capital requirements, and they're trying to put in a COVID line, but half the councils don't want it because they have no COVID money left. So they said, why do we need a COVID line? We have COVID money left, which is earmarked for COVID expenses. So that's my argument. And new contracts, compliance and policy, staff must now have 3 doses and residents have their 4th. Now, additional documentation for insurance coverage. For example, if somebody fell, we have to send that to the insurance company, and then they're going to hike our rates because that's the new mandate. Screening and testing requirements remain in place. New long-term regulations were released on January 18th. And I had a webinar on February 4th. 65 minutes of my life I'll never get back. But it was really informative, and they spent a lot of time going over fines for board members, head of nursing, and administrators. So it's an interesting time in long-term care. The next meeting is February 23rd. And the other thing, just quickly, I would be remiss. I think it was 2 Fridays ago, coldest day of the year, got the call that The volunteer appreciation bags were ready, and some of it couldn't wait till it warmed up. They had to go out that day. So on that Friday, Counselor Kirky and I went on the Friday, and then James had it the next week, brought it to the fire hall. And I'd like to thank Councilors Kirky and Scott as they delivered the gift bags. And again, on the coldest day of the year to date, the gifts were well received. And there's no gift, we can't give enough gifts to our volunteers. Simple as that. And all the committees, but I have to give a special shout out. This was the list that Steve and I had. And that was all the other committees, but if you turn it over, then we have fire department, which was just as big, and James carried that one out. So I thank special shout out to all the volunteers. Everybody was gracious and accepting in their gifts, and I had 2 in North Bay, and they thought it was just fantastic, you know?
We've received several calls, and they were thrilled that Mayor and Councillor were delivering those. Absolutely thrilled.
Well,
I had several people tell me that they much more enjoyed that than having their annual party. It was amazing. They thought it was,
Yeah.
something about my
thoughtful.
speech at the last one, or what?
I probably.
Yeah,
Well,
probably.
I thought it was the new counselor that he quite enjoyed seeing Steve at the door.
Yeah, well,
You
it
didn't
was,
do karaoke at the last one.
no.
Oh, okay.
No, I just thanked them and mispronounced most of their names. But anyway, other than that, I have nothing else to announce, but it was good. And like I say, I can't thank our volunteers enough. Simple as that. So with that, we can move on to, I believe, resolution number 5. And that's to adopt the minutes of the January 18 meeting. So Councillor Moore and Councillor Kirky, thank you. So it's number R 2022-20, moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Kirky, with the minutes of the council meeting held January 18th, 2022 be adopted as published. All in favor?
Yes,
Thank you, Tom. Okay, and next, the audited financial statements, mover and the seconder.
Marchant,
Thank you. And Councillor Scott, thank you. It's number R 2022-21, moved by Councillor Marchant, seconded by Councillor Scott, that we accept and approve the 2021 audited financial statements as presented. All in favor? Tom?
yeah, yes,
Thank Carrie? The next item here is authorizing the purchase and installation of security cameras. We're going to defer this to closed session in the next meeting, being that it's probably not prudent to tell the public forum where you're putting your security cameras. So we're going to defer that to closed session.
Thank you.
That was one of my errors. Okay. The next, number 8. That we move funds from the Safe Restart Fund Reserve to apply to 2021 ventilation costs. Just an explanation, and if I get this wrong, Chris is going to jump in. When we applied for it, we applied for 50,000, we got 80%. And we have to pay 20, so we had 43,000. And and it was,
The RFP came in at 46.8. But there was a clawback for the modernization grant that we got for our AVL system. They had already given us the money and we came in under budget. So they let us keep that money in that year. And then last year, they took $13,718 out of whatever we got for grants last year. So it was pulled out of this grant. So we came up short. But
so we
because it's
have
for COVID,
30. And that's why we need 16,900. And that would say Free Start is the COVID money. It has no effect on the budget whatsoever.
No, it comes from the reserve and I can tell you what's left in that reserve. That will leave us in our COVID safe restart reserve, $88,387. So we have money in our COVID reserve to pay levy increases for COVID costs if they are identified.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Moore and Councillor Scott. It's number R 2022-22. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Scott, that we transfer $16,913.52 from the Safe Restart Fund in reserve to apply to overrun costs associated with the ISIP funding for replacement and upgrades to the ventilation systems in the community center, public works garage, and township office in 2021. All in favor?
Yes,
Thank you. Carried. Okay, now, when we have talked about internet and accessibility, we've said that we need to put more money in. We have 30,000, I believe, in there already. So we're suggesting another 30,000 of the modernization fund. So there's $60,000 in there ready as soon as, I mean, I think we all read the thing from Blue Sky. So as soon as they come out, we have 60,000 ready immediately to go into broadband and internet projects. So is there any question about that? Okay, mover and seconder, Councillor Kirky, and
I will.
okay, I'll give him that one. And Councillor Marchant, and that, now we need numbers.
Oh, I'm sorry. That one would be number 23.
Right, yeah. So it's R 2022-23, moved by Councillor Kirky, seconded by Councillor Marchant, that we designate 30,000 for the modernization funds in reserve to be used for broadband and internet projects within the township of Nipissing as they may become available. All in favor?
Yes,
Thank you, Tom. Okay, the next thing here we look at is proposal for consulting for the waste disposal sites. Now, we've talked about this before. We've had the same company for a number of years. We have had some questionable results, some interesting results, some whatever. So again, it was suggested by council. We put out a request for proposal. So we will do that with your blessing. So I need a mover and a seconder, Councillor Kirky and Councillor Moore. Number R 2022-24, moved by Councillor Kirky, seconded by Councillor Moore, that we authorize the release of a request for proposal for consulting services to provide annual water quality monitoring and reporting for the township of Nipissing waste disposal sites. All in favor?
yes,
Thank you. Okay, the next one, municipal software. John, Paul, and Chris had told us earlier that the Baker program is ending. Mr. Baker is retiring. So,
As of
we-
December 31st of this year,
okay. Oh,
2022.
okay, good. So get that out there, right? So a request for proposal. Any comments or questions? I know I read it all. I didn't understand half of it. So hopefully some people with more technical expertise will.
I know at one point we were talking about multiple municipalities buying a program together, but it's not gonna work.
It won't do it.
We spoke to a municipality south of here that also has Baker, and they're transitioning to a new software. There seems to be limited software that covers all of the modules that we currently have. So Baker looks after everything for us, from taxation to animal control, building, fire watch, everything is in there. So, and they like the system they're with, and so we use some of their information to build our RFP.
So mover and seconder.
Argent,
Thank you. Number R 2022-25, moved by Councillor Marchant, seconded by Councillor Scott. Do we authorize the release of a request for proposal for the supply and support of a municipal software program? All in favor?
yes.
Thank you. Okay, now the next one, request for proposal for the supply and installation of playground equipment for Heritage Park. If you noticed in there, they have dates. The project needs to be completed. And I believe the rec committee wants to have a meeting to go over it in March, to go over the.
Yes.
Yes. So that's why we have our request on the docket tonight. So a mover and the seconder again, please. Okay. You guys are Kirky and Moore, so that I can see. So it's number R 2022-26, moved by Councillor Kirky, seconded by Councillor Moore, that we authorize the release of a request for proposal for the supply and installation of playground equipment for Heritage Park. All in favor?
Yes,
Thank you, carried. Okay, now this was was mentioned, it has been mentioned in the past, and Councilor Moore was good enough to mention it again. This would all be part of what we're going to look at our council priorities, but I don't think we need to wait. This is something that, I think, we just keep doing and doing every time.
Yeah. I did notice on the resolution, I thought I brought it, I printed it off. It did say 40 on the top, but we're asking for 50. Is that error on
No,
that
this
one?
says 40.
Yeah, but I think we're asking for 50.
Or was it 50? I can just.
Well, I'm good with 40. I mean, but I think you've got 40 and 50 on the resolution.
Right.
So,
I was looking at, well, because the community safety zone is moved to a 40,
okay.
that's
Oh,
our
okay.
roads, but we're asking for 50 on the
Yeah.
highway so that
So
it
that- yeah, that has to be changed, so.
the community safety zone. is good.
No, yep.
They covered lots of things on that resolution, so hopefully we'll look at it this time.
Okay. So, correct. So mover, James, thank you. And the seconder, Councilor Kirky. Thanks. It's number R 2022-27, moved by Councilor Scott, seconded by Councilor Kirky, whereas community safety is a priority for the township of Nipissing, and whereas a community safety zone has been enacted along BD Blake and Front Streets with a reduced speed limit of 40 kilometers an hour and increased fining capabilities. Whereas South Shore Education Center is located located on Beatty Street with students and staff walking to the school and for events in the community. Whereas the Nipissing Township Museum, Heritage Park Outdoor Rink, and a future playground are located within the community safety zone and along Highway 654 through the Hamlet area. Now, therefore, the Township of Nipissing Council respectfully requests the Ministry of Transportation review the current speed limit of 70 kilometers along Highway 654 from Lake Nipissing Road toward Highway 534 and consider a further reduction to 50 kilometers an hour in order to promote improved community safety. All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you, carried.
Just need to know if any other councillors-
You want to go?
Yes.
Anybody
You
else?
got me, the resolution?
Anybody else for Phenom? I know I can't, but we have an excellent representative.
I just had it ready in case it was not.
So a mover and seconder, so
Tom,
okay, thank you, Councillor Marchant. So it's number R 2022-28. Moved by Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Marchant, that we authorize Councillor Moore to attend the 2022 Phenom MMA Northeastern Ontario Municipal Conference hosted by the City of North Bay, May 9th to 11th, 2022. All in favor?
yes.
Carried. Okay, and then the annual AMCTO conference in Niagara Falls, unless they change it.
Unless it get canceled.
Yeah.
Probably goes in first.
A mover and a seconder. I'll take two gentlemen. It's number R 2022-29, moved by Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Kirky. And we authorize the municipal administrator to attend the AMCTO 2022 annual conference in Niagara Falls, June 12th to 15th, 2022. All in favor?
Yes.
You carried. Okay. So this is the priorities that we had suggested. I think everybody's looked over them. Is there anything that we missed? I think that was everybody's list that I had the chance to peruse.
We can add to it for you, Councillor.
Pardon me?
We can add anything you like.
No, I was, well, when I called it, I wasn't sure about it, but everything that was on it, we pretty much had everything covered, so. I didn't have anything else to add to it.
I agree. So what we'll do that the municipal administrator, these are the priorities and she's going to report on these
As we look through.
as they work through the right. I mean, there's some pretty big ticket items there. So mover and seconder. Councillor Moore and Councillor Kirky. Okay. So it's number 2022-30, moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Kirky. Be it resolved that the report from the municipal administrator regarding the 2022 council priorities be received. All in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Carried. Correspond. Okay. There's a bunch of reading there. Okay, Ontario Land Tribunal. It's it was set up in case a poor council or road council made decisions that negatively impact whatever. We have had no issue with the land tribunal. Evidently, other areas have, because they have they've changed what the council has determined that this will happen, and the Ontario Land Tribunal has ruled against them, you know. Right now, we've had no issue, and they've been quite supportive, so I don't know if we just read this, it's an information item, and, you know, we keep it for now with council blessing. Tom?
I agree,
Okay,
your worship.
yes,
Yeah, I agree with, I think there has to be an appeal process or a place for an appeal, especially now with this ministerial zone orders that can overrule everything else. This might be a chance to bring things out in the open with the, you know, the land tribunal before
agree.
the minister got involved, because these ministerial orders can, you know, just overrule everything.
yes. So I think we will keep that as information. We will not suggest that it be dissolved. The correspondence from the mayor over provincial offenses courts. Again, this is everywhere from Sunridge to Huntsville to North Bay. There doesn't seem to be a way that they found yet of solving it, because as soon as they go to do something, they have shut down for COVID again, and there's 2 months. So, you know, again, I would suggest an information item. Unless, if that's all right.
Yeah, I agree.
The third one, we get our notice from Vic regarding our motion in the National Child Care Program, and he does point out that he received it, and then points out that we've got full day kindergarten and everything else, and how badly the Liberals, he suggests, had issues with it. So I thank Vic for acknowledging it. And again, we just asked the provincial government to agree with the feds, but it hasn't happened yet. Number 4, copy of correspondence regarding payment in lieu of taxes on federal properties. We have none. So doesn't have much to do with us. Minutes of the Township of Nipissing Rec Committee. Excellent presentation from our people. The Ministry of Environment, Conservation, Parks. That's an information item for all of us. The public library, the Union Library. We're going to have an update after the 28th. So, and Steve gave us an excellent. And number 8, from Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities and Northwestern, we sent a support resolution to that. And then finally, the minutes of Golden Sunshine Nonprofit Housing, and we read it. I don't think there's anything to do with it. So we do accept the correspondence, if you will. Councillor Kirky and Councillor Scott. So it's resolution number R 2022-31, moved by Councillor Kirky, seconded by Councillor Scott, that we accept the correspondence as presented. All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you, carried. Okay, who wants to soldier up for this bad boy? Statement of accounts, Councillor Scott. Thank you, and Councillor Moore. If there's anything Any questions you have there?
Yes,
Yes, go ahead.
page 6 of 8, Woods welding to training facility. Is that the fire department, $4,100?
That was actually approved in the 2021 budget. And that was, it was journal entry to be paid. It was one of the receivables that, or payables that you saw in the audited financial statements that moved forward. And yes, that was for the fire department training facility.
What FD Welding was training about gases or welding or?
No, the actual C-tainer that's located for training purposes and had to.
Oh, okay. Okay,
So the welding done on the C
Correct.
container. Okay.
okay then.
Anything else? Well, in that case, let me read this. It's number R202232, moved by Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Moore, that the statement of accounts dated January 20th, February 3rd and 4th, 2022 totaling $292,522.18 be approved. All in favor?
Yes,
You. Okay. Our confirming bylaw. Who would like to? Y'all want to stay? Thank you, Councilor Marchant.
yeah. I don't have to drive home through the icy rain.
Yeah, well,
There you go.
something's starting to stick to my chair, so too many clothes on tonight. R
Yeah.
2233, moved by Councilor Marchant, seconded by Councilor Moore, that we pass bylaw number 2022-07, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on February 8th, 2022, read the first, second, and third time and passed this 8th day of February 2022. All in favor?
Yes,
You. Last but not least, looking for 818. Mover and the seconder for the adjourning, Councilor Turkey, Councilor Moore, Councilor Scott, always likes to stay. Number R 2022-34. Moved by Councilor Turkey, seconded by Councilor Moore, that the meeting be adjourned at 8:18 p.m. Next regular meeting to be held February 22, 2022. All in favor?
yes.
Turn that frown upside down. Thank you. I thank you all. If you make it, again, it's an information next Thursday, beginning at 4. We're to be here to listen to their comments. That was a nice way of them telling me, don't tell them, listen to their comments, hear their concerns. So I hope anybody that can make it, can make it. I'll certainly try to make it, and we'll see you